Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're getting into a really significant issue, one with pretty deep roots and wide-ranging consequences, the displacement of Gone tribals in India.
That's right.
And this topic, it really touches on several crucial areas: internal displacement, security strategies, the rights of indigenous communities.
Absolutely.
Which makes it particularly relevant, I think, for UPSC aspirants looking at current events, social justice, and governance.
Definitely. And our discussion today, it's really anchored in a detailed article from The Hindu. It does a great job examining the historical context, the profound impacts, and the challenges these communities are still facing.
It's quite a case study, isn't it? Showing that complex interplay.
It really is.
So our goal here in this deep dive is pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
We want to give you, our listener, a clear, comprehensive handle on this. We'll try to unpack the historical ironies, take a look at government actions and perhaps inactions, and really shed light on the struggle these tribals face for their identity, for dignity. Think of it as maybe a way to cut through the complexity, get you those essential insights you need for analysis, for essay writing, especially if you're prepping for the UPSC exams. Okay. Let's dive in.
Right. So the article kicks off by highlighting something, well, deeply ironic, actually. Back in 2005, you had about 50,000 Gone tribals displaced.
50,000, that's a huge number.
It is. They were moved from Chhattisgarh to what was then Andhra Pradesh, now split, so parts are in Telangana too. And this wasn't, a natural shift.
Yeah.
It was a direct result of counter-insurgency operations. The aim was to curb Maoist influence in the area.
And the article mentions this wasn't exactly a new idea, this strategy of moving people.
Not at all. And this is a crucial point. It was consciously modeled on the strategic hamleting the U.S. used in Vietnam.
Back in the 60s.
Exactly. The thinking was, sever the link, the perceived link anyway, between the insurgents and the local tribal population by physically separating them.
Okay, separate the people from the fighters.
That was the idea. And what's really striking, maybe disturbing, is if you look back, the article points out a similar tactic was used right there in Telangana, much earlier, 1949.
Post-independence.
Post-independence, yes, to counter communist revolutionaries then. So a key takeaway here is that this approach, this forced separation for security, it has a history.
And a history of not working so well.
A history of often failing to achieve real integration. Instead, it tends to breed resentment, alienation within those communities.
Which brings us to this incredible irony the article highlights.
Yes, it's quite something. These very communities, the ones uprooted and frankly marginalized, have actually in recent years become really valuable assets in the state's fight against the Maoists.
How so?
Their knowledge, their deep understanding of the local terrain, the languages, things that external security forces often just don't have.
Right, that local intelligence is invaluable.
Precisely. And the article adds another layer here: the recruitment of surrendered Maoists into the security forces themselves.
So, former insurgents joining the state forces.
Yes. It creates this dynamic where people from the very communities targeted by counterinsurgency are now, sometimes, part of the state's security setup. It just shows how tangled conflict and identity can get.
Okay, so the displacement was driven by these security goals, but what about the people themselves? What were the actual sort of day-to-day consequences for the Gone tribals?
Well, the consequences outlined are significant, and they're long-lasting. The Gudikoya tribals, that's what they're called in Andhra Pradesh and Telangana.
Ah, okay. Different name there.
Yes. They've now spent almost 2 decades living on land that's officially seen as illegally occupied forest land.
2 decades in limbo, essentially.
Pretty much. And their situation is so precarious, largely because of a critical gap. India doesn't really have specific national laws, nor does it fully buy into international frameworks for internally displaced people, IDPs.
IDPs, people forced from home, but still within their own country.
Exactly. And this lack of a clear legal framework, it just leaves them incredibly vulnerable.
Vulnerable in what ways? What does that mean practically without that legal safety net?
It means they're exposed to exploitation. The article is clear about this. They can be taken advantage of by, various people, the state officials, local police, even sometimes other tribal groups who might view them as competition for resources.
Because they're in this legal gray area.
Precisely. An administrative blind spot, almost.
Yeah.
It makes them easy targets for different kinds of abuse.
And this vulnerability, it sounds like it's made worse by problems with bureaucracy, with just getting basic recognition. The article talks about apathy, even statelessness.
That's a really important dimension.
Right.
Let's look at the Forest Rights Act, the FRA, specifically Clause 3.1 meter.
Okay.
This clause is quite clear. It mandates providing alternative forest land for tribal communities displaced before a specific date, December 13, 2005.
Which it should cover these gone tribals, right? They were displaced around then.
It absolutely should.
Yeah.
But the tragic reality is how poorly this has been implemented for them in Andhra Pradesh and Telangana. They've submitted applications, apparently numerous ones, but the Chhattisgarh government, their state of origin, hasn't really acted.
They haven't followed through or engaged with the central government on it.
Seemingly not effectively, no.
Mm.
And it's quite telling, as the article points out, when you contrast this with, say, the 2019 Brew Rehabilitation Plan.
Ah, yes, for the Brew tribal.
Exactly. There you saw more proactive steps, more effort put into supporting the displaced Brew community. This difference, it raises serious questions about fairness, about prioritization, doesn't it?
It really does. A sort of selective application of support.
Indeed. And maybe one of the most damaging things is how the host state governments, Andhra Pradesh and Telangana, deny their tribal identity.
Deny their identity? How?
Even for people born and raised there, maybe second or third generation now, they're officially classified as migrants.
Migrants, not tribals from that state.
Correct. And this isn't just semantics. It's not just a label. It has huge practical consequences.
Okay, can you spell those out? How does being called a migrant affect their actual lives?
Well, fundamentally, it excludes them from essential entitlements, from welfare benefits that are specifically meant for scheduled tribes in those states.
Like what kind of benefits?
Things like potential land rights, reservations in state schools or colleges, maybe certain government job opportunities reserved for STs. They're cut off from all that.
So it just locks them into poverty, marginalization.
It perpetuates that cycle, yes.
Yeah.
Makes it incredibly hard for them to integrate properly, to build stable lives, to thrive.
And the article suggests the state governments aren't just being passive, they're sometimes taking actions that actively seem to push them out.
That's another worrying point raised. You have Telangana reportedly taking over tribal farmlands for things like afforestation projects.
Taking their farmland.
Yes. And then reports from Andhra Pradesh of authorities actually demolishing their makeshift homes. Now, whatever officials might say about providing some limited humanitarian aid.
Actions speak louder, maybe?
Exactly. These actions strongly suggest an underlying push, an effort to make them return to Chhattisgarh, regardless of the lives they've built over nearly 20 years.
So they're caught, precarious living, maybe some temporary help from the courts now and then.
Yes, the judiciary has stepped in occasionally, maybe granting temporary stays against eviction or issuing some directives.
But no real long-term solution from the political side.
That seems to be the crux of it. Those judicial interventions, while important, haven't really translated into a solid, consistent political strategy for their proper rehabilitation, for recognizing their rights. There seems to be a lack of sustained political will.
And meanwhile, you have a younger generation growing up there.
Right. And the article emphasizes this. The younger generation, many of whom know no other home, they desperately want stability. They want opportunities, education, jobs, and crucially, they want recognition of their identity in the place they actually live.
It's a plea for basic rights and belonging.
Essentially, yes.
Okay, so as we wrap up this deep dive on the Gone tribals' displacement, what are the main things we should really take away from this?
Well, I think their story is a stark reminder, really, of the potential human cost of security strategies when they aren't balanced with a strong commitment to human rights, to the well-being of the people affected.
All right, the human dimension can get lost.
It can. And it really highlights the damage done by bureaucratic indifference and the fundamental injustice, of denying people their land, their identity, their dignity. For UPSC aspirants, I think a key insight is the need to really critically analyze the long-term social fallout of security policies.
Absolutely. And for our listeners focused on the UPSC exams, it's just so clear how relevant this is. It cuts right across key syllabus areas: social justice, governance, internal security, current affairs, obviously. Having that nuanced understanding of these complex socio-political issues is just vital for good analysis, strong essays in the exams.
Which leads us maybe to a final thought, a question for you, the listener, to ponder. Given the ongoing efforts, the deadlines even, to address the Maoist insurgency, what policy measures do you think would work best? How do you ensure national security and uphold the rights, facilitate the rehabilitation of displaced groups like the Gone tribals?
That's a tough balance to strike.
It is. And maybe also consider, how does this specific case challenge our perhaps simplistic ideas of development or security, especially when achieving those goals seems to lead to the marginalization of already vulnerable people?
Really crucial questions for reflection. We genuinely hope this deep dive has given you a clearer picture of this complex and frankly vital issue. If you found this discussion useful, informative, maybe for your UPSC prep, or just for general understanding, please do hit like, subscribe to our channel for more deep dives like this.
And please, leave a comment. Any further questions you have or your own thoughts on this topic, we'd love to hear them.
Definitely.
And just to reiterate, as we said at the beginning, the core information for this deep dive came from that detailed article published in The Hindu.